Over the years, people have had mixed reactions to a government's war on drugs, ranging from full-on support to claims that it has racist and political objectives. Because of these controversies, different countries, including Canada, have different approaches when it comes to the war on drugs. Hello everyone, my name is Cynthia and I will be discussing Canada's war on drugs, and we'll also check some countries who have controversial ways in dealing with their drug problem. In Canada, many Canadians report that they have used illicit drugs. At some point in their lives, 24% of Canadians have used one of the following drugs: cannabis, cocaine or crack, ecstasy, speed or methamphetamines, hallucinogens, and heroin. Due to popular opinion, medicinal use of cannabis was legalized nationwide on July 30, 2001. In Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's 2015 election campaign, he promised to push the legalization of marijuana. Thus, in October 17, 2018, the Federal Cannabis Act came into effect and made Canada the second country in the world, after Uruguay, to formally legalize the cultivation, possession, acquisition, and consumption of cannabis and its byproducts. Canada is the first G7 and G20 nation to do so. The most important federal statute dealing with illicit drugs is the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act, which was proclaimed into force in May of 1997. There are 6 common offenses under it: possession, trafficking, cultivation, importing or exporting, and prescription shopping. In Canada, offenses are divided into 2 broad categories: those tried by summary conviction and those tried by indictment. If the Crown proceeds with summary conviction, the offender is liable to a maximum penalty of 6 months to 1 year imprisonment and $1,000 to $2,000 fines. If the Crown chooses indictment, the maximum penalty for possession is 7 years imprisonment. The maximum penalty for cultivation is 7 years imprisonment. Trafficking, possession for the purpose of trafficking, importing, and exporting all carry a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. Since the war on drugs vary per country, let's take a look at some of the countries with controversial ways to address their drug problem. First on the list is Portugal. Portugal faced a drug problem, mainly cannabis, cocaine, and heroin, that peaked in the 1990s. According to the Transformed Drug Policy Foundation, drug-related deaths in Portugal severely worsened. As a response, legislators enacted one of the most extensive drug law reforms in the world in 2001, which is the decriminalization of low-level possession and use of drugs. While the manufacturing, dealing, and trafficking of illegal drugs is still penalized under Portugal's criminal justice system, those found to be in possession of drugs for personal use are not given criminal penalties. Instead, a person faces a local panel composed of professionals in the field of law, health, and social work. The members of the panel determine the sanction to be given. Sanctions on drug offense range from fines to community service. If found to be suffering from drug addiction, an individual is asked to undergo rehabilitation in a facility. Portugal did not stop with decriminalization. It also increased funding to help expand and improve government programs focused on prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and social reintegration. As a result, drug overdose decreased among adults to just 3 deaths for every million, very low compared to EU's average of 17.3 deaths per million. Meanwhile, more people have also sought treatment for drug addiction despite treatment being voluntary. Meanwhile, in Switzerland, they saw a huge increase in the number of dependent drug users of heroin by the end of the 1980s. Aside from the massive public information drives on the consequences of drug use, Switzerland's drug policy also focused on therapy and harm reduction. Under therapy, individuals suffering from drug addiction are given medical and psychological care. Harm reduction, meanwhile, seeks to minimize health and social consequences of drug consumption and abuse. Although Switzerland has not completely eradicated the use of illegal drugs, drug-related deaths have steadily decreased from 1990s to the 2000s. From 405 in 1991, the latest estimated number of deaths, primarily due to drugs, stands at 152. While places like Portugal and Switzerland are being studied for their progressive and revolutionary approaches to treating addiction, other countries make headlines for the opposite reason. Muslim countries or nations governed by secular authoritarian regimes are the worst places to be caught possessing even the smallest amount of drugs, even there was no intention to distribute. In Malaysia, for example, the law mandates death penalty for drug traffickers. Furthermore, anything from half an ounce of heroin to a few ounces of marijuana makes a suspect a trafficker. People who test positive for drugs are automatically sentenced to a year of compulsory treatment. Singapore's drug laws are some of the toughest in the world. Possessing small amounts of drugs can lead to a jail sentence of 10 years and fines worth tens of thousands of dollars. Having enough of certain amounts of drugs, such as 2 grams of heroin or 15 grams of cannabis, is grounds for being automatically presumed by law to be trafficking. People caught with higher amounts, like 15 grams or more of heroin or 500 grams or more of cannabis, will be subject to a mandatory death penalty. In Vietnam, a person caught taking illicit substances could be sent to rehabilitation, a euphemism for forced labor and near starvation. Casual drug users can be forcibly sent to treatment centers where the treatment consists of severe discipline that borders on torture. Persons caught with small amounts of heroin or other narcotics can still be sentenced to death. Saudi Arabia's practice of Wahhabist Islam means that not only are there no bars or liquor stores in the country, visitors are also forbidden from bringing any kind of drugs into the Middle Eastern nation. Anyone caught using drugs by the infamous religious police can be sent to jail, publicly flogged, and deported. Drug traffickers can be executed by hanging. Other countries with severe drug problems and no death penalty has resulted to the people forming vigilante groups to help address the drug problem. This has resulted to a very bloody war on drugs. In Mexico, Mexican authorities have been waging a war against drug trafficking organizations for more than a decade, but with limited success. Thousands of Mexicans, including politicians, students, and journalists, continue to die in the conflict every year. In 2018, homicides hit a new high at more than 28,000. Many were linked to drug cartels. In recent years, the emergence of vigilante groups known as autodefensas has exacerbated the problem. Made up of mostly rural farmers, these civilian militias have attempted to fight drug traffickers and restore order to towns, filling in where local police have failed. Though illegal, these groups became a formidable force against the cartels. In the Philippines, there is no stopping the administration of President Rodrigo Duterte from waging a war against illegal drugs. Duterte ran on this platform and won by a landslide in the 2016 elections. In the January 2018 data of the Philippine National Police, it shows that about 120,000 drug personalities have been arrested, while almost 4,000 drug personalities died in anti-drug operations across the country. A vigilante group called the Davao Death Squad was allegedly connected to the former Davao City Mayor and current Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. The group is alleged to have conducted summary executions of individuals suspected of drug dealing. The Human Rights Watch estimates a total of 12,000 drug suspects were killed through extrajudicial killings, but they failed to prove that the president is involved in any of these killings.